Before the ink dried, the whole town had already turned toward the tree. Struck by the market bell, Ludger pushed through the fish smell and damp wool of the square while two families shouted his name. A bride's dowry chest had vanished before dawn. The cooper swore the miller's kin had taken it. The miller's wife lifted both hands and called that lie before half the town. Ludger had held the office for 9 days. He wore his father's fur-trimmed mantle, though the shoulders still sat too broad on him. Under one arm he carried the town register, thick with copied statutes from Munster and old judgments made by men whose names were rubbed pale. Inside the hall, he ordered, "This will be settled by proper law." Some obeyed, others looked past him, toward the ancient linden at the edge of the square. Its roots rose from the earth like knotted fingers around the stone bench. There Ludger's grandfather had heard quarrels over fields, lambs, ovens, fences, and broken promises. Old Greta, who sold herbs by the church wall, touched her shawl and said, "The tree hears what walls do not." Ludger did not answer her. He had studied in a chapter school. He knew how false memory bent in crowds. He knew that town peace depended on record, seal, and measure. So he brought the families into the hall, set the ink horn on the board, and began. The groom, Burnt the cooper's son, claimed the chest held linen, 2 silver spoons, a wool cloak, and 30 Rhenish guilders promised by the bride's uncle. The bride, Alk, spoke with red eyes and a straight back. She had seen the chest by her mother's bed at midnight. At prime, the room stood empty. No lock was broken, no window latch hung loose. Then came the first splinter in the case. A shepherd boy said he saw Miller Hinrich's younger brother carrying a box toward the river before dawn. A baker's widow swore that same brother never left the tavern yard until cockcrow, where he slept beside a flour cart. Hinrich himself struck the board with his fist and demanded payment for the insult. Burnt stepped forward. Benches scraped. Someone began to cry. Ludger wrote each statement in careful lines. Yet the more he wrote, the less the room held. The air turned sour with sweat and anger. When he dismissed them until noon, the bell rope outside was already moving again, and the old women under the linden were whispering his father's name. Ink against bark. By noon Ludger had called 6 witnesses and found 6 roads leading nowhere. The cooper's sister heard wheels in the lane. The mill hand heard nothing but rain in the millrace. A child said she saw a black dog drag cloth through the yard. Her mother pulled her back before Ludger could ask more. Her finger on the bark carried more weight than his stack of copied laws. He turned to the statutes. Theft of a marriage portion required restitution. False accusation required a fine. Disturbance of market peace could lead to the stocks. Each rule sat clear on the page. None told him whose hand had lifted the chest. So he did what young men do when the ground shifts beneath them. He made the ground harder. He ordered Hinrich's brother held under watch in the guild shed until sunset. He forbade both households to trade with each other. He sealed Alk's house and sent a clerk to count what goods remained. That should have cooled the square. Instead, it split the town down the middle. The coopers nailed their shutters closed and muttered that millers stole not only grain but honor. The mill folk turned their sacks elsewhere and said the new magistrate served his own table first. By evening, women who had shared ovens for years crossed the lane without greeting. Old Greta found Ludger as he left the hall. Resin and crushed mint clung to her basket. She stood beneath the linden and tapped the bark with one bent finger. "You press people flat," she said. "They are not parchment. They are subjects of law," Ludger answered. She looked at him without fear. "The law is one thing. Peace is another." Nearby, a shepherd named Conrad cut a piece of bread with his thumb and knife. He nodded toward the tree. "My father swore there once, and your grandfather made 2 brothers divide a field by where water settled after rain. No charter said so, yet both men ate at one table the next feast day." Ludger felt heat rise in his face. He had heard these stories since boyhood, always with the same tone, as if judgment grew from roots and not from trained minds. "My grandfather judged in rough times," he said. "We have better order now." Greta lifted her basket strap again. "Then why does your better order make the baker refuse flour to the cooper's daughter?" He had no answer. He wished to speak. Behind her, children circled the linden. One girl laid her palm on the bark before running off. The act was small, almost hidden, yet it tightened something inside him. People touched the tree as they touched a grave marker or a cradle, with hope and fear together. That evening he reviewed his notes by candlelight. Wax dripped over the margin beside Hinrich's name. He forced himself to sort each voice by rank, nearness, and possible gain. Still one fact troubled him. If the chest had been stolen for coin, why leave the silver candlesticks in Alk's room? If stolen to break the marriage, why take the linen too? At Compline the watchman came with a fresh report. Someone had slashed the cooper's wagon cover. A mill apprentice had been struck with a yoke pin near the bridge. The injuries were light, but the meaning was not. The quarrel had stopped being about a chest. Ludger closed the register and listened. Outside, the rain had ended. Water fell in slow drops from the linden leaves, each one clear enough to hear. The court beneath the linden. At dawn the burgomaster sent for Ludger. The older man smelled of cold ash and wool smoke. He did not sit. Under leaves and open sky, silence proved stronger than walls. You will hear the case outside, he said. If you do not, each side will gather cousins by nightfall, and I will have pikes in the square. Ludger stiffened. Court belongs in the hall. Peace belongs where people believe it can stand, the burgomaster said. Take your bench to the tree. So before terce, Ludger walked into the square with 2 clerks, the town seal, and the register. A ring had already formed beneath the branches. Women held baskets at their hips. Men smelled of horse, flour, leather, and wet earth. The stone bench under the garrixland shone dark from the night rain. No bell announced this hearing. The sound was lower and stranger, leaves moving over many held breaths. Ludger sat. Each witness will speak once. No man will shout down a woman, and no kin will answer for another. The words came sharper than he intended. Yet the square settled. First he called Alk. In the hall she had spoken like a cornered bird. Under the tree she stood barefoot on the stone rim around the roots, as custom demanded for a marriage dispute, and her voice steadied. She described folding linen with her mother, placing the silver spoons in a red cloth, hearing her little cousin cough in the loft, then sleeping in her wedding shift beside the chest. What woke you? Ludger asked. She closed her eyes. A creak. Not the chest. The stair. That had not been in his first notes. Why did you not say so yesterday? Her fingers twisted in her apron. In the hall all faces were turned on me. I could smell the tallow smoke. I could not think. Murmurs ran through the crowd. Ludger raised a hand and called the cousin, a boy of 8. The child stared at the roots, then at Greta, then at Ludger. Did you hear anyone on the stair? I heard Aunt Mechthild crying, he whispered. Alk's mother jerked as if slapped. She had accused the Millers with fierce certainty from the first hour. Now her mouth opened and closed with no sound. Ludger leaned forward. Why were you crying? Mechthild pressed both palms against her skirt. Because the chest was gone. Conrad the shepherd spoke from the ring. Ask before dawn, not after. A judge in the hall might have rebuked him. Ludger almost did. Instead he turned back. Were you awake before dawn? She swallowed. Yes. Why? No one moved. Even the pigeons on the church roof seemed still. My brother had not come, she said at last. He had promised the coin for the dowry. Without it, the marriage would fail. I feared shame. A new path opened. Ludger felt it under his feet as plainly as a plank over water. Did your brother arrive? No. Then how did the guilders enter the chest? Her answer came small. They did not. The square gave a single hard breath. Bernd stepped back from Alk as if distance could save his pride. The missing chest had hidden one theft, but not the theft they had all named. The coin had never existed. Mechthild began to shake. This was no ritual to her now, only exposure. She looked older than she had the day before. I meant to send for my cousin in Rada. He might have lent it. I thought I had one more day. Then the chest vanished, and if I told the truth, my daughter would stand mocked in the market. Here the old custom did what no written order had done. It made shame visible and shared. Women lowered their eyes because they knew the hunger of wanting a child to marry with dignity. Men looked at their boots because death had visited each of their doors in one winter or another. Ludger called for Hinrich's brother. The young man came from watch, pale and furious. Under the linden he did not meet Mechthild's gaze. Did you carry away the chest? Ludger asked. I carried a chest, he said. Not hers. Ludger felt the hearing tilt again. Whose, then? The answer did not come, because a shout rose from the outer ring. A mill apprentice pushed forward, dragging behind him a small handcart caked with river mud. On it lay a broken chest with iron bands bent open like ribs. Red cloth clung to one hinge. Wet linen spilled over the side. What the river kept the apprentice dropped to one knee, panting. Caught below the ford in willow roots, he said. I saw red cloth in the floodwater. The river returned the chest, but not the simple answer everyone wanted. The crowd surged, then stopped when Ludger stood. He did not need to shout. The broken chest had done that work for him. Inside lay the linen, soaked and brown at the folds. The silver spoons remained wrapped in cloth. No purse of coin appeared. One side panel had split from a hard blow, not a careful thief's hand. Mud packed the lock. Ludger touched it and smelled the cold iron, the bitter river weed. Who knew the coin was missing? He asked. No one answered. He looked from Mechthild to Bernd, from Bernd to Hinrich's brother. Then his eye caught something else. A child near the front stared at the chest with open terror. It was not Alk's little cousin. It was Elsa, daughter of the ferryman, thin as a reed and no more than 10. Greta saw it too. She rested one hand on the girl's shoulder. Speak plain, she said softly. Elsa began to cry without sound. Ludger climbed down from the bench and crouched until he faced her at eye level. The square blurred around them. He could hear only the leaves and the child's breath catching in her throat. Did you see the chest go to the river? He asked. She nodded. Who pushed it? My brother, she whispered. But he did not steal it. A murmur rippled. The ferryman's widow covered her mouth. Elsa pressed both fists into her apron. He was hiding in Alk's yard before dawn. He wanted one silver spoon. Only one. He said the apothecary in Rietberg would not give medicine without payment, and mother's cough had blood in it. The widow bent over as if struck by winter itself. He lifted the lid. Elsa went on. Then he heard steps and dropped it. He tried to drag the chest away, but it was heavy. He rolled it onto our handcart. At the riverbank the wheel hit a stone. The chest fell in. He ran. Where is he now? Ludger asked. In the sheep hut beyond the ford. Conrad the shepherd swore under his breath, then caught himself and bowed his head. He knew the hut. So did half the square. Ludger straightened. This was the point where the law stood ready with clean edges. Theft, concealment, disturbance of marriage contract. Penalties could be named before the next leaf fell. Yet before him stood a widow whose cough had turned red, a girl shaking in wet clogs, a mother who lied from dread of public shame, a groom whose pride had fed the fire, and a town willing to bruise itself over a chest that held less gold than fear. He sent 2 men for the ferryman's son, with orders that no one strike him. While they were gone, he called the apothecary's assistant from the edge of the crowd. The boy admitted the medicine had been priced beyond the widow's reach. Then Ludger asked Bernd whether he still meant to marry Alk if the coin was lacking. Bernd's jaw worked. He looked at his father, then at Alk, whose dress hem was dark with mud. At last he said, I meant to marry her, not a purse. But I wanted the town to know I had not been cheated. There it was, the sharp little hunger beneath the uproar. Not bread, not silver, but standing. The wish to leave the market with one's head high. When the ferryman's son arrived, he came pale and hollow-eyed. He confessed at once. He had not opened the chest beyond the lid. He had not known there was no coin. He had meant to take one spoon, then another, then lost his nerve as dawn neared. Shame had driven him to the river, and fear had finished the ruin. Ludger did not write at once. He looked up into the branches. Wind moved through them with a low sound like distant skirts over grass. All his schooling had taught him to sort acts by offense. Beneath the linden he saw that judgment also had to sort wounds by depth. When he finally spoke, his voice carried to the church. Steps. The ferryman's son attempted theft and damaged a marriage chest. He will repair the chest under the cooper's eye, and for 6 market days he will labor without wage on the bridge road. The town chest will pay for the widow's medicine now, and her son will repay half in work after Michaelmas. Some nodded, others frowned. He lifted his hand and went on. Mechthild hid the lack of dowry coin and let another house bear blame. For this she owes public apology before witnesses and 1 bolt of linen to the mill household for slander carried by her silence. Mechthild bowed her head. Tears fell onto her sleeves. Hinrich's brother is released from suspicion. Bernd and his father will pay for the mill apprentice's treatment, since their accusation fed the brawl by the bridge. The marriage contract may stand if both houses still consent, with no false sum entered beside it. Now all eyes turned to Alk and Bernd. Alk did not rush. She looked first at her mother, then at the ferryman's widow, then at the broken chest. Let it stand plain, she said. Linen, spoons, cloak, and no guilders. Bernd drew one breath, long and hard. Plain, then. The square loosened, not in joy, but in relief. People could carry relief home. Relief baked bread, mended wheels, and reopened shutters. Leaves for every ear. The hearing ended, but Ludger did not rise. People remained beneath the linden, speaking in lower voices than before. A miller's wife offered Alk a dry shawl. The ferryman's widow sat on the root edge with Greta beside her, both women saying little. Some griefs took shape only when another body sat near. He kept the book, but he no longer mistook it for the whole court. Ludger opened the register and read the old judgments copied by his father's hand. For the first time he noticed what those entries lacked. They did not hold every tear, pause, glance, or smell of fear. Yet each one had been born from such things. The page was the shell. The living matter had happened under open sky. His clerk, Dieter, cleared his throat. "Shall I record the ruling?" "Yes," Ludger said, "but not as if the tree did the work for us, and not as if the book did." Dieter smiled, uncertain whether this was wit or warning. 3 weeks later, the repaired chest stood in Berndt's house. The crack along its side showed as a dark seam, plain to any eye. Alk chose not to cover it with paint. "Let wood keep its memory," she said. The ferryman's son hauled stone for the bridge road from dawn until noon each market day. He kept his head down and worked in silence. No one praised him, no one spat at him either. That, in a small town, was a mercy close to bread. The widow's cough eased after the apothecary's powders and broth sent from 3 houses, one of them Hinrich's. Mechthild made her apology before the Linden on a windy afternoon. Her voice broke on the first words, but she finished. When she offered the bolt of linen, the miller's wife accepted it with both hands, then cut off one narrow strip and tied it around Mechthild's wrist until sunset. No one explained the gesture. None needed to. It said, "You spoke before us, and we will not cast you out today." That evening Ludger asked Greta to walk with him around the tree. The bark smelled warm where the sun had touched it. "You wanted me to surrender to old customs," he said. Greta snorted. "I wanted you to open your ears." He rested his palm against the trunk. The surface felt ridged and cool. "I thought judgment meant choosing the right rule. And now," he watched 2 boys chase each other between the roots, careful not to trip on the lifted earth. "Now I think judgment means finding where a town can still live together after truth is spoken." Greta gave one short nod. "That is closer." The next market day, Ludger moved the outdoor bench a little, so those who spoke would not stand with the sun in their eyes. It was a small change. Still, people noticed. Conrad noticed. The baker's widow noticed. Children noticed because children notice what adults touch. By harvest, folk had begun calling him the Linden Judge. At first Ludger disliked the name. It sounded like surrender, as if his schooling had blown away like chaff. Then one evening a traveler asked where to bring a complaint over a lame mule. A brewer's boy answered, "To the Linden, if you want more than noise." Ludger heard and said nothing. Years later, when bark had thickened around a lightning scar on the north side, men still pointed to the route where Alk had stood barefoot and named the day the town stepped back from a long feud. They also remembered something smaller, though no less weighty. A young magistrate had climbed down from his bench to hear a frightened child without making her climb up to him. In Wiedenbruck that mattered. A market town lives by measure, toll, and charter. It also lives by whether the weak can speak before the strong and still be heard over the rustle of leaves. When autumn came, Ludger's written rulings grew neater, not shorter. Yet before each hearing he would stand one quiet moment with his hand on the linden bark. Then he would turn to the crowd, ink ready, ears open, and the square would settle around him like a held breath released.